And exactly what's going on here is difficult to work out in terms of data, but what we see is that there's a transformation which goes on from the period when Marx was writing, when fixed capital was all about contributing to the increasing productivity of labor, when the consumption fund was relatively small and not terribly significant. We've arrived at a situation where, 150 years of further development of capital accumulation, the dynamics of capital accumulation, the role of fixed capital has changed. It is now an absorber of surplus product, an absorber of surplus labor, and the consumption fund has become huge in terms of its absorption capacities of labor. Now, this is testified to by one of the governors of the San Francisco Reserve Bank, kind of saying, well, in the United States, we have the habit of getting out of crises by building houses and filling them with things. And therefore, what we see then is fixed capital starts to become of this sort. My favorite example of that right now, you look at what's going on in New York City and you see all of this building going on and the crazy building of Hudson Yards or something like that, huge kind of real estate development. You cannot tell me that that has anything whatsoever to do with increasing the productivity of labor. It's the absorption of over-accumulating capital and over-accumulating use values in a mindless form of urbanization. Now, here I ask you a question. What are the mindless forms through which capital can successfully dispose of its surplus product? There are two mindless forms which come straight away to mind. Since the 1945, one of the mindless forms is military expenditures. Now, Marx had an interesting thing to say about these. He says, military expenditures, well, it's like taking as much value as you possibly have and just dumping it in the ocean. That is, this is an unproductive absorption of surplus capital and surplus labor in an activity which doesn't have anything whatsoever to do with changing daily life of anybody in the economy. Now, that's one part of the problem. And of course, when Reagan came to power, saying, we've got to get rid of all of these state expenditures. He was anti-Keynesian and this kind of thing. But when it came to military expenditures, he upped the budget hugely. And that the defense budget undercame. So some people started saying, well, actually what Keynesian practiced, as opposed to what he preached, was a military form of Keynesianism. That is, you take over-accumulating capital, you pour it into the defense industries. Defense industries may or may not use the damn stuff. They have been using it some, which is very disturbing. But essentially, it's not doing anything for the economy other than absorbing the surplus product and absorbing it by paying for it through state taxation and revenues. So there's one vast area. Now, it's interesting. See, Trump comes into power, and what's one of the first things he does? He ups the military budget like crazy. So again, there's this kind of Keynesian militarism, which is a way of absorbing surplus product in a non-productive activity, of tipping, as Marx would put it, as much value as possible, surplus value as possible, into the ocean, just getting rid of it that way. The other way is through what I would call mindless, stupid urbanization. Now, actually, a lot of what's going on in urbanization right now is just, it doesn't contribute to anybody's well-being in terms of it's not as if it's about affordable housing and making decent schools and hospitals and all those kinds of things and all the facilities you need. No, it's about building, spectacular shopping malls and consumer palaces, and it's about, big sports stadia and all those kinds of things. In other words, what we're looking at is the reshaping of urbanization by fixed capital formation, which is designed and to counter the falling rate of profit by creating forms of consumption which do not increase the social productivity of labor. Along with that, you have the rapid and huge expansion of the consumption fund. The amount that is wrapped up in terms of, stuff that's going to last for 10, 15 years in all the household gadgets and all those things and what's going to be done about it, and the constant replenishment of those household gadgets by better gadgets and so on. Again, this is the creation of a world. So we have two major features of the economy, 1980s onwards, which are features dealing with the way in which fixed capital is absorbed into military expenditures and is wasted in mindless urbanization.